If you're just getting started in your programming career, you've probably already heard the term API. Programmers talk about it all the time. You want to make a Twitter bot? Use the Twitter API. You want to put a Google map on your website? Use the Google API. APIs are all around us, and in this video, I'm going to explain to you what they are, why they're useful, how to use one, and what they look like in real life by checking out the Twitter API. So let's pretend you need to pay a bill on your bank's website. You sign into your account, enter the amount you want to pay, and you click on Submit. Magically, the bank somehow knows that me, Daniel, paid my credit card bill. But how do they actually know? I clicked a button on their website, sure, but how does that button translate into paying a bill? So the key lies in clicking that Submit button and the series of events that took place immediately afterwards. So let's pull the layers apart a little bit and get into this a little bit deeper. Now, when you click that Submit button, what is actually happening is that information about you, the user, and the account you're acting on is transmitted as an instruction to another computer on the banking system's network. Now, inside this instruction contains all this information about the bill that you're trying to pay, who you are, and the amount. And conveniently, this machine on the other end received, understood, and submitted the transaction for processing. But how does this computer on the other end know how to interpret this information? How does it even know the information you're sending is about a bank account, let alone the fact that you're trying to pay a bill? This mystery is solved by the API, also known as the Application Programming Interface. The textbook definition of an API is as follows. An API is a computing interface which defines interactions between multiple software intermediaries. It defines the kinds of calls or requests that can be made, how to make them, the data formats that should be used, and the conventions to follow. Now that was a lot of words. Let's go back to our original example to understand this a little bit further. So the banking system in this example knows how to interpret the past information through an API that the system created and exposed. You can think of an API as a toy with different shaped holes in it, and you need to match the small shapes into the right holes. So in this example, the banking system might create a Pay Bill API. And when it is created, the programmer who creates it may say that this API will take a string called account number, an integer called amount, and another integer representing the destination account number called receiver. When the Pay Bill API is invoked, it returns the balance of the user's account in an integer field called balance. Now, the other applications can look at the APIs that the banking system exposes and decide to use them in any which way. In this example, we saw the usage of a hypothetical Pay Bill API, but you can create any API that provides either functionality or provides information. So you can think of an API as a contract. The creator defines the name of the API, what the API does, the arguments it will take in, and the output that it will spit out. This pattern of clearly defining our input and output is what makes the API so special. It brings order to the madness on the internet where information is flying all over the place between systems. It forces developers to carefully think about what they want their system to do and encode those behaviors into APIs that it will expose to clients. The API can also define other behaviors. For example, what should this Pay Bill API do if a user tries to call it and provides an invalid account number? Should it simply reject the request? Or should it create an account first and then pay the bill? APIs can also specify what they will do in certain scenarios through pre-established agreements. So to recap what we learned so far, we learned that an API is, in essence, a contract that defines the relationship between two systems in order to exchange information. I mentioned that they also given some structure to some of the madness, but what else do they do, and what are some of the other benefits? Well, firstly, they provide a layer of abstraction between two systems. A caller, sometimes also called the client of an API, does not need to know how the API is implemented. It just needs to know what the API promises to do. The API takes a certain input, performs a specified job, and produces a certain output. It's predictable and it's consistent. By combining APIs together with other APIs, we can build some really powerful systems. In fact, this is why software these days is evolving so quickly. It's basically developers standing on top of each other's shoulders and building on past work. So now that we know what an API is and what it does, let's check out an example now by looking at the Twitter API to update a person's status. Okay, so here we are in the browser here, and as you can see, I'm on Google, and I just typed in Twitter API. I'm going to click on the first link here for the Twitter API documentation. So on this page, what we are being told are the different types of APIs that Twitter exposes. So we just want to look at the Twitter API, the generic one here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Home now. And so there's two different types of APIs. There's the early access, which is, if you want all the new features, then there's the legacy version. So let's look at the legacy version 1.1. Okay, so scrolling down here a little bit. So this is where we're starting to get into the APIs. So for the standard APIs, we have a couple different themes here. So themes of APIs regarding tweets, themes regarding users, direct messages, media, trends. There's a whole bunch of different things you can do with the Twitter API. Now, with regards to this exercise, I wanted to see what the API looked like if I wanted to post a status update to my Twitter account. So obviously that's going to be under tweets. And if we look at the different themes over here regarding them, we can see post, retrieve, and engage with tweets, which looks like what I want to do here. So if we scroll down here, we can see the different types of APIs that are available to us. So there's a post API, there's a post and a get here. A post is usually for updating information or performing some action. A get is usually for retrieving information. And we can see just below the type of the API is the path of the API. And this is going to be more relevant in a few moments when we look at this a little bit more in detail. But like I said, there's two different types of APIs in this example, post and get. Now let's look at the arguments that need to go into the post API for updating a status, which seems to be this first one here. So here it's just telling you some basic information about the tweet status, what it actually means. Most people probably know this. So to get more low-level information that you would actually need to call the API, you click on this API reference button. So if we take a look at this now, so we're interested in this first one here, post statuses / update. So I clicked on that guy, we're on this page, and so this is just telling us some information about all the arguments. So there's a whole bunch of documentation here that is relevant. So for instance, for each update attempt, the update text is compared with the authenticating user's recent tweets. Any attempt that would result in duplication will be blocked, resulting in a 403 error. So like I was mentioning before, these are some of the formal agreements that this API is specifying in addition to what we'll see as the arguments or the input-output that we talked about earlier. We see here in this kind of little blurb that in a certain scenario, it's going to throw a particular exception. Then it goes into more information about rate limiting and about the geotagging feature. We're not really interested in that in this example, so let's keep on going. So this is the URL of the API. This is basically the address on the internet of where you need to invoke your API against. So you're going to be invoking it using this URL as the endpoint. So it supports the response format of JSON or JavaScript object notation. It does require authentication. So in order to do this or actually use the API, you need a user access key, which you can only get after you log in to Twitter and go to the developer section. We can see here that it's rate limited, so you can't just spam the Twitter API and get tons and tons of data. And then there's more information on the number of requests you can perform per 3-hour window. So now if we scroll down the parameters, so this is the input of the API. And you can see here, so in this kind of table here that we're now seeing, we can see there's a couple different things. So there's the name of the parameter that needs to be passed in. So we have status here. We have a column saying whether or not this field is required or not. So often as a creator of an API, you can specify whether or not something is required or something is optional, like they are doing here. And then they just give you a brief little description of what this API does. So it's telling us that it's the text of the status update that you want to perform. There's no default value. They don't really provide you an example. Now let's see if they give us the return arguments. And as I'm scrolling down here, you can take a look. A lot of this stuff, if not all of it, is optional except for the status, which is kind of the required component in this transaction. So you can see all of this stuff, whether or not you're referencing another status, all this extra stuff here is all optional. You don't need to provide it, but if you do, you're going to get a slightly different functionality out of this API. So typically they would define what the response looks like around this section at the bottom of the API definition, but it looks like in this example, they're just doing explain it through an example. So this is what an API call looks like. Although it's being done through a terminal, through a curl command, it can also be done by using an application or using a plugin on your browser. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to call APIs. So we can see here through this curl command, we're calling the post API and we're specifying a URL, which is the Twitter endpoint for updating your status. And then you just pass in status using status equals hello. So that's going to be the status that gets posted to your account. There's a whole bunch of other details here. Everything that you see below the line is regarding authentication and authorization. And this information that we're seeing in the bottom section here tells Twitter who you are because you need to provide your customer key, as you can see in this field here. So that's what the request looks like. Let's take a quick look at the response. So we can see in the response, we get a whole bunch of different information. So we get kind of a confirmation saying that it was created at a certain time. We get an ID, and we get a whole bunch of other stuff here. So information about the user, the name, the screen name, the location, a whole bunch of details about this request that was just made. So what we've just looked at here, this is an API. You can go and start using this anytime you want just to play with it. But we learned that an API are the pillars of the internet. It's how systems talk to each other. So hopefully you learned a little thing or two about APIs. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.